For a show with a budget that could practically fund a small country, Game of Thrones had some truly baffling errors that made it to the screen. From genuine production errors, continuity nightmares, and logistical impossibilities that left us all scratching our heads, we are going to go through the absolute worst errors. You have to start with the caffeine in the room, which is arguably the most famous mistake in the history of modern television. It is Season 8, Episode 4. Everyone is at Winterfell celebrating the fact that they just barely survived the long night. Tormund is being his usual loud and boisterous self, trying to woo Brienne, and Daenerys is sitting there looking isolated and contemplative, realizing she's losing her grip on the affection of the Westerosi people. It's a moody, dramatic shot, or at least it was supposed to be, until the internet collectively spotted a modern, disposable coffee cup sitting right there on the table in front of the Mother of Dragons. It wasn't even hidden. The funny thing is, everyone immediately assumed it was a Starbucks cup because of the white lid and the sleeve, and that brand got millions of dollars worth of free advertising from the memes alone, even though the showrunners later clarified it was just a generic craft services cup from the set. HBO eventually went back and digitally erased it from the streaming versions, but the damage was done. If you thought the coffee cup was bad, the finale somehow managed to double down on the hydration-based absurdities. We go all the way to the very last episode. During that council meeting at the Dragon Pit, where the most powerful surviving lords and ladies of Westeros are deciding the fate of the realm. It's a serious scene with heavy dialogue about who should be king, but apparently the production team just gave up on hiding their water bottles. If you look closely near the feet of Samwell Tarly and Davos Seaworth, you can spot plastic water bottles on the ground, peeking out from behind their boots. It is actually hilarious when you think about it, because these actors are wearing heavy, hot, leather and velvet costumes in Dubrovnik in the summer, so you can't blame them for being thirsty. But it really breaks the immersion when you're listening to a speech about the future of the kingdom, and there's a piece of single-use plastic rubbish right next to the boots of a legendary smuggler. Speaking of things that just completely changed without explanation, we have to talk about the geography of King's Landing, because it seems the capital city has the magical ability to terraform its surroundings, depending on what the plot requires. If you go back to the early seasons, and I mean really look at the establishing shots, King's Landing is established as this coastal city surrounded by lush forests and mountains. You see it in the wide shots when characters arrive, and it matches the descriptions of the area in the books. It's a vibrant, living landscape. But then, fast forward to Season 8, when Daenerys is at the gates, ready to siege the city, and suddenly, the place looks like it's been transported to a barren wasteland. The mountains are gone. The trees have vanished. It's just flat, dusty desert as far as the eye can see. Fans tried to make excuses, saying maybe they cut down the trees for the war effort to build scorpions or defenses, but that doesn't explain where an entire mountain range went. Then, there is the issue of the Dothraki army, which apparently possesses the power of cellular mitosis, or instantaneous respawning. During the Battle of Winterfell, the episode The Long Night, we watched in dread as the Dothraki screamers, their Aurochs set on fire by Melisandre, in a visually stunning moment, charged into the dark to fight the army of the dead. We watched those flaming swords go out one by one in the distance until there was nothing left but silence. It was a terrifying way to show the scale of the threat. The characters basically confirmed that the Dothraki were wiped out. Grey Worm even tells Daenerys later that the cavalry is gone. But then, a couple of episodes later at King's Landing, Daenerys suddenly has a massive horde of Dothraki riders again, cheering and sacking the city. Where did they come from? Did they respawn? It felt like the showrunners wanted the emotional weight of seeing the Dothraki extinguished in episode 3 to raise the stakes. But they also wanted the cool visual of a Dothraki army in episode 5 to show Daenerys' power. So they just did both and hoped we wouldn't notice. The math didn't add up. It cheapened the sacrifice of the earlier battle because there were no lasting consequences for the army. Speaking of that battle, we absolutely have to talk about the changing strength levels of the undead whites, because the math is just not mathing here. Remember back in Season 7, when the Hound captures that white and tosses it into a wooden box to haul it all the way to King's Landing? The thing is snarling and scratching, causing a ruckus, but ultimately, it cannot break out of a simple wooden crate. It's scary, sure, but it's manageable. Fast forward to the crypts of Winterfell in Season 8, and suddenly, these resurrected dead guys are punching through solid stone sarcophagi like they are the Incredible Hulk. I mean, seriously, if they are strong enough to shatter stone tombs from the inside, which requires an insane amount of force. By the way, how on earth did a flimsy wooden crate hold one of them a season prior? It really feels like the power scaling of the zombies relied entirely on how dramatic the scene needed to be in that specific moment, rather than any established physical rules. And it drives me crazy. The inconsistencies go right into the props department, specifically when it comes to those legendary Valyrian steel swords. We are told over and over that these are the sharpest, most durable, most legendary weapons in the world. But during the Battle of the Bastards in Season 6, which, don't get me wrong, is rightfully praised as one of the best battle sequences in TV history, there is a moment that completely ruins the illusion if you look too closely. Watch Jon Snow scrambling to get on his horse. As he's running, look at his hip. His sword, Longclaw, is literally flapping around by his side like a wet noodle. It is so obviously a rubber stunt sword used for safety, so Kit Harington didn't injure himself or the horse. But seeing this legendary blade wobble like a pool noodle really takes the wind out of the sails of such a gritty, realistic scene. Sometimes though, the errors aren't even about the main cast. Sometimes it's just the poor extras trying their best to keep up. If you go back to Season 1, right when Sir Barristan Selmy is being dismissed from the Kingsguard, do yourself a favor and pay attention to the background. There is a guard standing behind him who tries to sheath his sword and just fails miserably. He struggles with it, poking around and missing the scabbard entirely, while everyone else is standing there, stoically. It's a blink and you'll miss it blooper that somehow made the final cut. And honestly, once you see that one guy having a terrible day at work, you simply cannot unsee it. Before we continue, do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button so we don't have to send a shadow assassin after you. Moving on, we need to discuss Stannis Baratheon's death scene. Now, Stannis was a man of strict duty, we know this, but I don't think his duty extended to carrying modern electronics into battle. In the scene where he is slumped against a tree, bleeding out before Brienne of Tarth finds him to deliver justice for Renly, look under his leg. You can spot a rectangular box shape with a wire running up his leg. It looks suspiciously like a battery pack for a microphone, or perhaps a charging brick. It's such a small detail, but for a show that prided itself on immersive costume design, having a piece of tech visibly bulging out of a medieval costume is a pretty sloppy oversight, especially considering it's the character's final moment on screen. But hey, props are one thing. The laws of physics and biology are another thing entirely, and the show played fast and loose with those whenever it was convenient, particularly regarding Melisandre. A huge plot point in Season 6 reveals that Melisandre is actually an ancient, withered crone who uses her enchanted ruby necklace to maintain a youthful appearance. It was a shocking reveal that added so much depth to her character. The problem is, if you rewind to Season 4, there is a scene where Melisandre is taking a bath while talking to Selyse Baratheon. She is completely nude, and guess what? She is not wearing the necklace. Yet, she still looks young and beautiful. This was obviously just a continuity slip-up, but in a show where magic is supposed to have specific hard rules, this was a glaring hole that fans have been trying to justify for years. The logic of how people move through the world also took a massive nosedive in the later seasons, and the prime example of this is the aquatic adventures of Jaime Lannister and Bronn. In Season 7, after the loot train attack where Daenerys unleashes Drogon, Jaime charges at the dragon and is knocked off his horse by Bronn at the last second. They fall into the Blackwater Rush. Now, remember, Jaime is wearing full plate armor, and he has a solid gold hand. Physics dictates he should sink like a stone and drown immediately. Yet, in the next scene, Bronn has somehow dragged him not only to the surface, but to a riverbank hundreds of yards away, completely undetected by the massive army and the dragon they were just fighting. Bronn is a sellsword, not Aquaman. The idea that he could haul a fully armored man that far underwater without both of them drowning is laughable, but the plot needed them to survive, so I guess physics just had to take a back seat. Speaking of impossible travel, can we talk about how the Sand Snakes in Dorne apparently unlocked fast travel way before everyone else? In Season 6, it felt like the showrunners just got bored of the Dorne plotline and decided to wrap it up as quickly as humanly possible. We see Ellaria Sand execute Prince Doran in Dorne, and at the exact same time, two of the Sand Snakes appear on a ship in King's Landing to kill Trystane. Here's the problem. We explicitly saw that ship sail away from the dock, while the Sand Snakes were standing on the pier in Dorne. Unless they are Olympic swimmers who can outpace a galleon across the open sea, they essentially teleported onto that boat just to murder a teenager. It makes zero sense geographically, but the show just needed them dead. Logic be damned. And while we are talking about Jaime Lannister's questionable memory and logic, do you remember when he had that emotional heart-to-heart with Brienne in the final season? He tells her about the awful things he's done, including strangling his cousin Alton to escape capture by the Starks. It's a tragic confession, except for one tiny problem. We watched that happen in Season 2, and he didn't strangle him. He literally bashed the poor guy's head in with his shackles. I guess when you kill that many people, the specific methods just kind of blur together, but you'd think beating your own family member to a pulp would be memorable. It feels like the writers just forgot the scene they wrote 6 years prior and hoped we wouldn't notice. Now, let's talk about Euron Greyjoy and his fleet, because we know Euron is this terrifying pirate, right? And the show made a huge deal, just like the books, about how he cuts the tongues out of his crew members so they can't speak or betray him. He literally brags about it to Yara. It is a super gruesome detail that sells just how evil he is. But then we get to season 8, during that ambush on Daenerys, and if you listen closely, you can hear sailors on Euron's ship screaming stuff like, "Turn around," and "Watch out." I'm sorry, but if these guys are supposed to be the mute crew of the Silence, they are doing a terrible job at the whole being mute thing. It's just one of those moments where the show set up a really cool, creepy rule for a character, and then totally threw it out the window because they needed some background noise for an action scene. And since we are nitpicking, we have to talk about the wigs. Daenerys Targaryen's hair is iconic. The braids are supposed to symbolize her victories in battle, so her hair is basically a character in its own right. But in the first episode of the final season, the continuity team apparently just lost track of what was happening on her head. There is this one sequence where she arrives at Winterfell, and her hairstyle literally changes between shots. In one angle, she has this super complex braid pattern, and then they cut to the reverse shot, and it is a completely different style. It happens so fast you might miss it. But for a show with this kind of budget, having your lead actress's hair magically transform mid-conversation is kind of a basic error to let slip through. Then you have some really weird perspective tricks going on with Jaime and Brienne. We all know Gwendolyn Christie is an absolute statue of a woman at 6'3", and in the books, Brienne is supposed to tower over pretty much everyone, Jaime included. But then you watch the show, and in several scenes where they are standing face to face, they look weirdly eye to eye. Did Jaime pack a pair of secret platform boots for his redemption arc? It's just a strange choice, because it takes away a bit of Brienne's imposing physical presence when the camera tricks make her look the same size as the Kingslayer. We also have to talk about the opening credits, because while that intro music is legendary, the visuals weren't exactly immune to mistakes. Back in season 1, the credits actually listed Sophie Turner with a Targaryen dragon sigil next to her name instead of the Stark direwolf. They did the same thing to Emilia Clarke, labeling her a Lannister in some versions, and even Ian Glenn got the wrong sigil. It was fixed later, but at the time, it sent the fanbase into a spiral. People were on Reddit analyzing the credits frame by frame, thinking it was some deep foreshadowing about Sansa's secret parentage or a hidden plot twist, when in reality, it was just a graphics guy copy-pasting the wrong icon. We really clowned ourselves over a typo. Speaking of names and lineage, the show got really sloppy with the actually details of Westerosi naming customs. In season 8, after the Battle of Winterfell, Daenerys legitimizes Gendry and makes him the Lord of Storm's End. It's a great moment, except she calls him Gendry Rivers. Now, any lore nerd knows that Rivers is the surname for bastards from the Riverlands. Gendry is from King's Landing, which is in the Crown Lands, so his surname should technically be Waters. It's a small detail, I know, but considering this show is based on books that are obsessively detailed about genealogy and regional customs, having the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms get the name wrong, and the writers letting it slide, just showed a lack of attention to the world building that made us fall in love with the show in the first place. And don't even get me started on the genetic mystery of Shireen Baratheon. The entire plot of season 1, the thing that got Ned Stark killed, hinged on him realizing that the seed is strong, and that all Baratheons have black hair, proving Cersei's kids were bastards. So explain to me why Stannis' true-born daughter, Shireen, has mousy brown hair. By the show's own very specific genetic rules that started a literal civil war, she should have jet black hair. It feels like the hair and makeup department just kind of forgot the central mystery that kicked off the entire series and figured none of us would notice. Another baffling moment involving bodily harm and recovery is the case of Jon Snow's migrating scar. At the end of season 5, Jon is stabbed to death by the Night's Watch mutineers, and it is a brutal, visceral scene. When he is resurrected, he has these distinct, gnarly scars on his chest and abdomen, and we see them clearly. But later in season 7, when he is shirtless again, the scars seem to have walked across his body. They moved positions and changed shape completely, unless Jon has some Wolverine-style healing factor that rearranges his scar tissue while he sleeps. This was just the makeup department not checking their reference photos from the previous season and hoping we wouldn't look too closely at Kit Harington's abs. Let's not forget the mystery of the disappearing extras, because this one is hilarious once you see it. In the famous scene where Jon and Ygritte finally reach the top of the wall and share that breathtaking kiss while the camera swirls around them, it is a beautiful, romantic moment. I'll give them that. But if you remember the climb, they weren't alone. A bunch of other wildlings were climbing right next to them. Yet, when the camera does that 360-degree pan to show the vastness of the world, Jon and Ygritte are completely alone on top of the wall. Did the other wildlings just politely jump off the edge to give them privacy? It's a cinematic choice to focus on the couple, sure, but logically, it makes no sense that their companions just vanished into thin air the moment the romance kicked in. Then, there is the issue of contagion, specifically regarding Jorah Mormont and his grayscale. We spent seasons being absolutely terrified of the Stonemen and the slightest touch transmitting the deadly disease because we were told it was highly contagious. Jorah gets infected by a mere touch. But later, in the fighting pits of Meereen, Jorah grabs Daenerys by the hand to help her escape the Sons of the Harpy. At this point, he is actively infected, and he touches her bare skin. By the established rules, Daenerys should have been a ticking time bomb of grayscale, or at least there should have been a moment of panic about it. But the show just ignores it. Jorah's infection is a plot device for him. But apparently, the virus decides to take a break and not be contagious when the plot needs him to hold hands with the Queen for a dramatic exit. And finally, we have to ask, what is the deal with the Night's Watch at the end? The entire purpose of the Night's Watch was to guard the realms of men against the White Walkers and the Wildlings. By the end of the show, the White Walkers are shattered into ice cubes, and the Wildlings are allies who helped save the world. So, when Jon Snow is sentenced to the Night's Watch in the finale, you have to ask, why does the Night's Watch even exist anymore? Who are they watching? What are they guarding? It feels like they just needed a way to get Jon back north to close his arc, so they pretended this military order still had a function, even though its purpose had been completely obliterated, leaving poor Jon to guard a wall against absolutely nothing.